The world is fast changing and news breaks at lightning speed. Let us guide you through events and stories about global narratives and developments in geopolitics, diplomacy, foreign affairs, and world economy. Get factual and multi-angle perspectives on stories around the globe. Global Television brings you Diplomatic Perspective every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. with Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Diplomatic Perspective, the world in front of you.
Hello everyone and welcome to Diplomatic Perspective on Global Television. This is another time for us to look at some very important topics. Have you thought about trade tariff? Well, we want to look at that today on Diplomatic Perspective. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo. And of course, before I let us know what we will be discussing today, I'll give you a little background. But all right, better still, we're looking at trade tariff. And of course, we need to look at what China is doing as it has to do with free concessions, for African countries. But today, we're looking at Nigeria, including the other African countries. Because if you want to talk about free trade and take out time to weigh China's tariff concession for Nigeria and about 50-something other African countries, you will be wondering what is happening. This is it. Effective May 1st, 2026, China will implement a zero tariff policy for 53 African countries, opening its massive markets to African goods to boost trade, create jobs, and foster industrialization. While this offers opportunities for increased agricultural export, manufacturing investment, and of course, industrial diversifications, it also faces challenges including Africa's weak infrastructure, reliance on raw materials export, and potential competition for local industries. This is what we want to look at today. Free trade, weighing China's tariff concession for Nigeria. I have my guest already seated in the studio right here, and we will be talking together in the person of Dr. Aliu Ilyas. Of course, in case you don't know, let me tell us who he is. In fact, he's an economist, an international economist for that matter. And he is also a partner with CSAL Advisory. Is a CSAL Advisory. It's good to have you join us here on A Diplomatic Perspective today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's quickly look at this very serious topic that we have behind us today. Free trade, weighing China tariff concession for Nigeria. A lot of people have been talking about China. I could remember we talked on this program some times back, and I was saying, some people will tell you, hey, with the way Nigeria is depending on China, borrowing day and night, have them work here and all of that. Some people will even tell you some places in Nigeria, if you go to some places, you think these Chinese people own the place. What do you think the first time you heard about free trade by China?
Right. Thank you so much for having me. I think China has been there for long, and they've strategically planned themselves to actually take over global markets, and they are strategic at that level. Let me give you this before we even delve into the matters. Do you know China have 2 free trade zones in Nigeria? Free trade zone. For you to know how committed they are to do business, how their government followed them here and there to actually make sure that business actually work outside the country. You also recall that around 1970, I'm not sure they are where they are now. They have to delink from the whole world, go back and actually put up their way. And now they're actually ruling the world in terms of a global market, maybe side by side by the US. Now, when we get to hear about free trade tariff, that simply means their custom will not be charging commodities that is coming into their country. That's what they are simply saying. That simply means that it's an incentive for African markets, 53 countries, to actually assess their country deliver items to their country. These are the things they're actually trying to do. They want to make sure that a lot of things are easy for them. But I must tell you this at the beginning of this talk. Most people see it as an advantage for Africa. Most people think, yes, we are there already, but it's also an advantage to China, because China actually is using this for what we call subsidy. They're also using this for to curb inflation going forward in the future. So
that is in China.
In China, they are so strategic.
Curb inflation in China or Nigeria?
In China, because and it also have a negative effect that happens to Nigeria as it is now.
But then, do you think there are opportunities here? Like you said, some persons are thinking. Are they thinking rightly? Are there opportunities in this?
Yes, 100% it appears to be opportunity, but when you do have opportunity, there's always alternative forgone. So that means you are going to forgo what you have. It could be a source to market for me, but for me, it's also not a good source for markets, because China is the size of Africa. Africa can boast of 1.5 billion people, and industry is very poor here. Goods and services are also still scarce. We still depend on importation. So I think we should harness within. But if China opens its doors, yes, you can bring anything you want to bring. It also has a negative implication on the African soil.
All right, let's look at their presence in Africa as a whole. Don't you think it's going to be an advantage to our industry? Some people will tell you China is doing so much in Nigeria especially, and our industry, don't you think this will impact? I'm referring to the local industries.
Right, so if you ask me, the answer is no. Yes, the answer is what? Is no. Because China is opening the door for you to bring a raw material to their country. In as much as you decide to take a raw material down to China, there's a problem here at home. And what is the problem? Our industry will find it difficult to grow. The infant industry will die, and they will not have raw material. Because remember, when you export, you tend to get more money, right? So then when you get more money, that simply means you deny the local industry the supplier is supposed to give. So what is the, remember we have what we call African Continental Free Trade Area. After, African Free Continental Trade Area is supposed to be an advantage, whereby African countries, especially like Nigeria, will supply South Africa, Egypt with raw material, will get raw material from Congo, from Kinshasa and what have you to Nigeria. So, in the place of us to do business among ourselves, we are now taking our raw material collectively and giving it to China. And what will China do? They will add value and bring it back to us. So we are actually importing poverty. So what we are supposed to do is supposed to come together through African Free Continental Trade Area to say, no, none of our material will go out of Africa except we had some layer of value to it. And that's where we can actually take advantage. A good example, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said should not be export raw. We should add some layer of what value. Recall that we actually feed the global community with 40% of shea they need. So that means we are actually doing the raw material, and another country will collect it, refine it, sell it, So we must start adding value, not only Nigeria, it must be entire Africa. No matter what you are exporting, ensure that you add value to it to an extent, even though it's the first layer of value, so that you can actually create employment, you can create purchasing power, you can increase our GDP, we can actually do better, and our industry can also be fed with raw material. But if you say, yes, we want to take everything to China, yes, it's good. You may think you are getting more money, but also denying growth at home.
But why is our government not seeing this? Why are they not thinking this?
Right. We have the African Growth Opportunity Act, AGOA. That was what Africa did. America did then. The same thing China is trying to do, whereby you take all the raw material. America said they opened the door. USA in particular, they opened the door for you to bring. And when you bring, you take it raw. And like I said, for China is an advantage. I made mention of two advantages. One is subsidy to them. How do I mean? Remember, if they remove tariff for all Africa to export to China, that means their country is going to buy cheap from us. Have you think about that? That means their own company there is going to buy cheap from us because we will not have to add any additional tariff. So to whose benefit? in the long run. They have opened the door that, yes, bring it to our country, don't pay XYZ. The XYZ you are not paying will make your output, what you are sending, to be what? To reduce in price. That is subsidy for them. So they are finding a way to make sure that the raw material come cheap and come with no bureaucratic bottleneck, no red tapeism. You know, these are what they actually intend to do. And the second one I said is going to reduce inflation. Remember, inflation is continuous increase in price of goods and services. So by the time they have it rolled there, what happens? Things will still come down. So it's quite strategic for China. And I was commending them. They continue to see way of conquering, you know, the world in terms of commodities. So that means they will continue to export. And if you also look at China, from the beginning, recall, do you know how much is a naira to a yuan? I'm not sure it's up to 250 naira. It's a strategic thing that they lower their, you know, their currency. You know, they devalue. In fact, America is accusing them that why you devalue your currency. They devalue simply because they want to attract raw materials, you know, attract markets, you know, and that's the strategy there. So they have that strategy and it is working for them. And as I say, remember, they also have a free trade zone in Nigeria. What do? They follow their companies in their country down to Nigeria so that by the time they're actually doing business in Nigeria, they also pay less of tariff. So that's a strategic one. And recall, anywhere that tariff or cost of productivity is cheap, that means the economy is going to be good. Because major problem we have now is input problem. A good example, in Nigeria today, do you know fertilizer is very, very expensive?
Yeah.
Remember, it's an input. So, and the more you put it, that the way you also sell your things expensive. So there are strategies that those raw material they use are very, very what? Very, very cheap. So, and Nigeria should take a cue from it. If you can make inputs cheap in Nigeria, other Africa will come here to buy things from us and we export at a global level. So I think China is strategic in doing this. We only have to come back home and see, is it a good one for Africa? Are we going to be exporting everything? That's the question.
But then, looking at our economy right now, do you think this economy is ripe for this kind of relationship?
Right. So the question is that, yes, it's ripe for it, but we have to be strategic too. You don't export everything. You know, you must also come back home and say, yes, this XYZ raw material, we are not going to export it without adding value to it. And also, we will not import this kind of materials. We must produce locally and also use locally. So we must have that. And that's why sometimes you have to look at our economy. We focus more on fiscal policy, taxation. We focus more on monetary policy. You know, let's curb the inflation. We're not looking at the major thing that will help you to get more money in taxation. The most thing that will help to stabilize monetary policy. And what is that? It is trade policy. We must look at our trade policy critically and use it as a tool to develop the economy. Because it is trade policy that will tell you that, okay, anything textile should not come into Nigeria. We should do it locally. Anything fertilizer should be produced locally. You know, should also be, you know, harnessed properly and add second-tier value to it so that, you know, when you are taking it out, you would have create employment through it. People will refine it, they will package it and, you know, export it out. So it's trade policy that actually helps. And that's why when we have the current Minister of Industry and Investment who came from Quebec, where she actually carries out some ease of doing business. Those ease of doing business then was much more paperwork. You know, when you want to register, before when you register at CAC, your TIN number, you have to go to NRS now to get it. But now it comes together, ease of doing business. But now we need to do it practically. We need to have to do it productivity. So how do we do it? By making sure that, yes, our supply chain problem is being resolved. Remember, China, because of supply chain problem, follow their country and standardize their product. Another thing we must also look at in this free trade is that what they give us is actually free access, not free entry. So it's been surprising that even the African free continental trade area, Nigeria is not harnessing it simply because we have access, we don't have entry. So what do we mean by entry?
Okay,
yes, what do we mean by entry? Entry simply talks about standardization. You know, you cannot take things outside without standardizing it. Okay, let me give you a critical example. I was somewhere in diaspora, and Nigeria has been talked about, and we zeroed down on Benue State. I said Benue State is agrarian in nature, is a food basket. Someone now say, hey, what you are saying may not be correct, because when you want to actually export fruit, let's talk about orange. So an average buyer internationally want to buy orange that have same taste. So I cannot have a basket of orange, right? And each one I pick have different taste. That we must, and if we want to harness that opportunity critically, that simply means that you must take the same species and grow it in that community, in that area. So that when people are harnessing, when they are harvesting something of the same taste. A good example is Malaysia. We always said Malaysia came to Nigeria and take palm oil. If you go to Malaysia now, the highest height of their palm oil will not be more than palm tree. They make sure that this do it scientifically. I'm sure that the same species that you don't need. Remember, if you recall in your let me say village, because an average African man should have village. You see those palm trees be as tall, and they will now use one thing to be climbing. So imagine after 100 years, we will not find a way to actually make sure that those palm trees will replant and have it at a particular stage. So that's the problem we are having. So we must start standardizing our products, so that when you are exporting, they will accept it. Remember that at a particular time we're also exporting yam, exporting raw yam. Before I get to some places that's actually, it's on the sea and what have you. So we must start adding value to that yam. Maybe you turn it to powder and you standardize it. If I ask you today, how many companies in Nigeria have ISO? And that's the standard. So what our standard of Nigeria is doing? So now the onus now is on the Minister of Industry. Why not say, manufacturers of social products, come together, let me train you on standard, and let me give you global standard certification, so that you can now export your product. Go to Shino, do that. Go to agriculture, do that. Go to industry, do that. Go to shoe, go to that. So because you cannot compete in global stage without having standards. So let's go back to access and entry. So you may have access. The entry condition is standardization, because China will not help you to allow you to bring everything you want to their country. You must have standards. So we must work on our standard so that we can enjoy the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and we can enjoy this free tariff from China.
While you were speaking, I was thinking about something.
Right.
Because we're talking about exporting now.
Yes.
What do we have in Nigeria to export? Because attention is on oil everywhere. Gone are those days when we can talk about agriculture, like you were talking about orange just now. We have just few people farming right now. Does it mean Nigeria is not going to have, even though we are saying, well, China have their hidden agenda, as the case may be, but the little opportunities in this, are you sure, do we see Nigeria being capable of maybe taking advantage of one or two opportunities in this?
Right. Remember, we have institutions actually taking care of this. We have the Nigeria Export Promotion Council. We also have a Nigeria Export-Import Bank, Nexim Bank. So these institutions is their responsibility, and I'm sure maybe they are under Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. So these are the way we have to now look at it critically. What do we do so that we'll be a hub, of some exports, some products? So we must start looking at it, define it locally, and see. And you must not do one size fits all. You must look at it segment by segment. If you want to export cocoa, how do we make sure that we add value? Imagine cocoa that will have over 100 years. Common, small value, we don't add it. We just take raw cocoa. So we now have international companies, doing a lot of things that we consume, with our cocoa. So how in the last 100 years we cannot? But if we go to a country like Ethiopia, that is their business. Tea. Right, but we have those things in our, we are not maximizing it. So these are the things. So what comparative advantage are we even having? Because if we look at Ethiopia, aside from their airline, their next business is farming. And what farming? The major on tea, their global supply of tea. So, but we have varieties. So that's why I talk about standardization. Our country must be intentional. And the onus now is on the minister. And I see this minister is a bit mobile. in terms of thinking. So if you are mobile in thinking, you should also think towards that direction and empower people. I can tell you, youth want to actually farm. The value in the farming is what will attract us. People in Ethiopia and other countries that are agrarian in nature, you see, there are young people in farming. Because when you talk about farming, it's a chain. Some people will be the one that will cultivate, some people will be the one that will buy, some people will be the one that will transport, some people will be the one that will export. You can see the layer of job that is there. So I think Nigeria needs to go back to, drawing board and actually plan effectively. If not, this will also pass. We won't enjoy it. I was discussing on a particular platform talking about President Bola Ahmed Tinubu visit to UK. And my question was that please don't discuss oil, because every time is oil. Why not look at all that things that we can actually export to those countries? Agro, cocoa, sesame, a lot of things that you can actually export. Fintech, a lot of things that you can actually... So until we start thinking about diversification, and our key strength is in what? Agriculture and industry, not even financial sector. Well, financial sector cannot give you the employment you are looking for. It's people that have money in stock, people that have money in banks. But when you talk about agriculture, people must be on ground doing one or two things. When you talk about industry, manufacturing, employ a whole lot of people, and that's how we can create employment in our country, Nigeria.
Yes, our relationship as a country with China, like you said, is a long time coming.
Right.
The other relations we've had, maybe partnership that we've had a lot of partnership with China in the past. There was a time I was traveling and we got to a toll gate and people in the car were like, all right, this road was constructed by the Chinese people, Chinese government, and this toll, they will be collecting this toll for some years. Then I was thinking, I was like, okay, is it that we don't have the money to construct these roads? Or the people don't think about the economic implication? Or does it mean it doesn't have economic implication? Because this is one of those things, because when you're talking about advantage, you should also think about the disadvantage, and do a weighing to see which outweigh the other.
Right. So the same thing you're saying actually happens to the railway from Abuja to Kaduna. So I saw Chinese still handling, controlling a lot of things. But in some way, as an economist, I will agree to that. If we are borrowing money from China and it's project ties, and they have to monitor it to get their own, I think I agree. Because
it will be more effective.
It is more effective. Nigeria is not, we will just be like a bicycle about it and let it just, and the debt will be there. So sometimes if they actually borrow us money and it's project tied loan, and they actually monitoring it and to recoup their money, it's fine. The only fear is that we're going to lose out in terms of technology transfer. Because the essence of you having multinational, international, coming to Nigeria to actually work, one of the advantage Nigeria should take is what? It's technology transfer. But because of the nature of the way we handle it to deliver to them, it will be difficult to have that technology transfer. Look at what happened to Ajaokuta. If there's a lot of technology transfer while they're actually doing everything, will it be at this level? It's not even moribund, it's dead. It's dead. So also other things that we are doing. So sometimes you must have, look at the airport here. You want to turn it to, it's an automated ticket. Look at what happened. It has to be suspended. Simply because we cannot actually manage the technology. And those are the part of the things I told them. I was talking about President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Please ask for technology for port authority. Because UK is very, very good in terms of anything port. That's part of their business. So when you have technology to read, you can actually expand it. So to talk about China,
he's in UK, so he can do that from there.
That's what we are saying. No, I was on live program. Sure, maybe his handler will listen. Because
I think they should. Michael is talking with his media aide there in UK.
Fantastic.
I'm sure reporter there.
I'm sure Michael will do more.
They should hear this and let them know what
I'm
to
sure
do.
Michael will do more to help us. So these are the things they have to bargain about. Can you looking at even sport economies? 5% or over 5% of Nigerians plays football in UK. Do you know what it simply means? Let only 1% of them have academy here. Let UK come and invest in football here. We won't be at this level. So it depends on the strategy. But looking at China, I think if they are managing what they are giving us, for me, I don't think it's bad.
But are we over depending on China? Because you're talking about UK now.
When you talk about over dependence, that's our major problem. We depend on not only China, America, UK, a lot of them. Cardoso was saying something, was it yesterday? He said Nigeria can withstand global shock. And I told someone, this is laughable. We have a global financial crisis, 2008. We have 2014 oil problem globally. We have COVID in 2020, right? And even recently, we have inflation, global inflation problem, 2024. Now we have Iran versus America and Israel. How well have we managed it? Do you know how much pump price is? And you say we can be.
It's not to
we
talk about right now.
Means that we depend on these people to do a lot of things.
All right.
You know, technology-wise, even some practical things that we can actually manage because there's no technology transfer.
Thank you very much. Well, I personally, I'm the one on the show, but I'm enjoying it so that I don't want this conversation to end. But then our time is up, everyone. I know everyone is enjoying this conversation because it's informative and educative. I thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us on Diplomatic Perspective today. We'll have you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. Right, everyone, this is the size of Diplomatic Perspective for today. Many thanks for being part of this program. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Bye-bye for now.
The world is fast changing and news breaks at lightning speed. Let us guide you through events and stories about global narratives and developments in geopolitics, diplomacy, foreign affairs, and world economy. Get factual and multi-angle perspectives on stories around the globe. Global Television brings you Diplomatic Perspective every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. with Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Diplomatic Perspective, the world in front of you.